If you, your daughter, granddaughter, niece, or sister has played women's college athletics since 1972, chances are Title IX made that possible. Today, you're listening to a special edition of The Public Square. In 1966, there were 16,000 females playing college sports. Today, there are over 226,000. Title IX is the federal civil rights law with these 37 words. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. It was signed into law by President Richard Nixon on June 23, 1972, after groundwork was laid by Congresswoman Edith Green, Senator Birch Bayh, and Congresswoman Patsy Mink. But the landmark law isn't without critics, or at least people who point out that there have been unintended consequences that have cost some men's college athletic programs in an effort to keep things equal. With that acknowledged, Title IX has given thousands of young women opportunities they otherwise would not have had. The opportunity to play the sports that they love. But today, there's a force in our culture that threatens to undermine the progress made in female sports that few in 1972 could have predicted.
Thanks, Patty. This week on The Public Square, our guest is Coach Kim Russell. Today, you'll get to hear Rob Walgate's exclusive interview with her about Title IX, women's sports, and how she's been personally impacted by the current culture war and its ripple effect across all college sports. But before we get to that, we wanted you to hear Coach Russell's recent testimony before the House Subcommittee on Healthcare and Financial Services.
I'm Kim Russell, an ambassador for the Independent Women's Forum. Why am I here? I'm 56 years old. I'm an athlete, a coach, a mother, and a teacher, and a longtime advocate for women and girls. This has been my life and my passion. I played 2 sports at the D1 level that never would have been possible without Title IX. I've been a lacrosse coach for over 27 years. I'm in 3 halls of fame for coaching and contributing to the growth of lacrosse, and there's actually an award in my name. Oberlin College removed me from coaching and offered me an administrative position after I chose to publicly tell my story and refused to be silent or back down about my belief that men, no matter how they self-identify, should not be allowed to compete in women's sports. I joined Oberlin College in 2018 as a head women's lacrosse coach and a wellness instructor. I've always been pro-woman, then and now. Over the course of my coaching career, I've been a mentor to many women and girls, sharing advice both on and off the field. My athletes, including several who've identified as transgender, have always known they can come to me to laugh, to cry, or anything in between. I've been nicknamed the hippie love coach. Not only because I'm a yoga instructor, I'm usually barefoot. These shoes are not my typical wear. I read energy and coach intuitively, but because I've given countless individuals a safe space to thrive and feel a sense of belonging. In March of 2022, I'd been following the story of Leah Thomas and kept thinking someone would speak up. How could a biological male be allowed to compete with women regardless of a hormone-blocking regime? I was flabbergasted that coaches, parents, administrators, and athletes were okay with this. After Thomas won, I reposted an Instagram post on my personal story that said, "Congratulations to Emma Wayant, the real woman who won the NCAA 500-yard freestyle." I added my own short commentary. What do you believe? I can't be quiet on this. I've spent my entire life playing sports, coaching, and starting sports programs for girls and women. Turns out, it was more controversial than I could have ever anticipated. Based on this simple post, I was called transgressive, transphobic, and unsafe. I was told to write letters of apology to my team and the athletic department because of the unrest and disruption I had caused. I couldn't apologize for something that I'm not sorry for. I would not and will not apologize for saying a biological male does not belong in women's sports and private spaces. As an athlete and coach for nearly my entire life, I am personally familiar with the distinct differences between male and female athletes. I gave birth to 4 kids. I ran the sidelines nursing a child while I coached in the state championships, and I've had another child on my back at the same time. After I refused to apologize, I was called in for a meeting of my team with a mediator present. A handful of the student athletes on my team attacked and vilified me as if I were the enemy and had just killed someone. A week later, there was another meeting with my team and 3 college administrators. For 1 hour and 42 minutes, the same athletes who I had treated like my own kids bashed me over and over again in front of the administrators simply for having a pro-woman perspective that was different from theirs. I had to stay quiet and repeat back everything they said and confirm that I had heard their concerns. At the end of the meeting, I was given the chance to respond, at which point I knew whatever I said would land on deaf ears. I was called into the AD's office after the season ended and handed a letter. At the bottom it said, "This letter is intended to help you understand and appreciate the impact of your actions and the need for you to immediately modify your behavior." I asked Oberlin to provide me with a written letter on what I had done wrong and how I could improve my behavior, but was never provided any clarity. When I arrived at Oberlin in 2018, I was so excited to be part of a community that celebrates free spirit, open-minded dialogue, freedom of speech, and freedom of expression. I'm the hippie love coach. I thought I was home. But Oberlin, like many higher-level institutions today, only seems to support the First Amendment if your values align with theirs. Most people have chosen to stay silent in this topic because of the consequences seem too great. Loss of a job, reputation, friends or family, you name it. I am here in part to speak for them. I will never apologize for believing that women and girls should have the right to single-sex competition, a right for which women before me fought tirelessly. I'm hoping that my speaking up will give others the courage to do the same. I am here hoping to ensure that you understand the ramifications of the Biden administration's proposed regulations and that you will each do your job to ensure that the original meaning of Title IX is upheld. It was passed when I was 5. I have reaped the benefits, and my life's journey continues to be massively impacted. The Biden administration is trying to effectively change the meaning and language of Title IX. If allowed, this will endanger women in sports and private spaces, take away opportunities from women in sports and academia. Never in a million years did I think I would be sitting here at 56, fighting to get back the rights that were given to women and girls 51 years ago. Since March of 2022, many more biological males have invaded women's and girls' sports. There have been life-changing injuries, opportunities lost, and privacy has been invaded. We are harming women and girls. You have the opportunity to be heroes. This is about upholding truth, protecting the dreams of female athletes, and the original meaning of Title IX.
That was Kim Russell before the House Subcommittee on Healthcare and Financial Services. When we come back, you'll hear our exclusive interview with the hippie love coach. Stay tuned.
We will be right back for more on The Public Square.
If you're a regular listener to The Public Square, you've heard of the release of the new book, Jesus, His Story. The response has been remarkable. Why the excitement? This is a sample of what readers are saying. Arranging the 4 Gospels into chronological order put the life of Jesus into perspective. Thank you. One told us, after reading Jesus' story, I knew this would make a great graduation gift for my nephew. Another said, I got my copy of Jesus' story and read it over the weekend. I want to order 6 more. Can't wait to give them to my friends and family. Interested? You can call us at 1-800-522-8683 or order online. Take a fresh look at the greatest story ever told, Jesus, His Story, at thepublicsquare.com.
spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the public square.
You are listening to The Public Square, and now Rob Walgate's interview with Kim Russell.
If someone was to ask you the question, who is Kim Russell? Would the answer 11 years ago be the same answer as today?
Yeah, I'm still the same person. In fact, Riley Gaines, Paula Scanlon, and I had a similar discussion before we went on the news. Riley asked me, she said, "You were called the hippie love coach." She said, "So have you changed, or do you think everything around us has changed?" And I said, "That's so fascinating, right? I haven't changed. I still love people the same way. I still care about people the same way. I still have the same beliefs. And what has changed is, I believe, everything around us, and the inability to have conversations about things."
Well, and every time I've heard you speak or watched you speak, it's very evident as a coach, you love your players. I mean, you've gotten into athletics and coaching at the collegiate level because of how you feel about the players and the sport they play.
Yeah. The hardest part of leaving any program is because you don't want to leave those kids, right? They become, as a mother, they're like my own kids. I love them, especially the ones who are more difficult, because I see their struggles and I can feel them. And the ones who typically are the most difficult to coach are usually the ones who reach out later in life and maybe say, "I know I didn't really appreciate you when I was there, but I just want to thank you because," and then, there's a message.
Well, let's talk about Coach Russell. Before it was Coach Russell, it was the player Kim Russell, right? Division I athlete, played lacrosse, William and Mary.
Yep.
Did you envision yourself getting into coaching when you were the player?
No. So that was, my maiden name was McGinnis when I was there. And actually a joke, my sister asked me when I graduated, do you see yourself coaching? I'm like, oh, no.
Fast forward from 2018 when you got the job.
Sure.
To the winner of, it would have been the winner, right, of 2022?
Yeah. I would call pretty much everything from January to May winter in Cleveland.
Yeah, Northeast Ohio.
Yeah.
But on social media, you had made a post or it was retweeted. Now it's reposted. It wasn't even, yes.
Yeah.
And that post, what did that post say?
So I had been watching and people were sending me things that were happening with swimming. And I kept thinking, somebody's going to speak up. This is insane. Somebody's going to say something. And I was seeing, nobody.
When we say speaking of swimming, we're talking about in the NCAA world.
Yes.
We're talking about a biological male.
Correct.
Leah Thomas.
Correct.
Competing, and I'm going to say dominating the NCAA women's swimming scene. Correct. Dominating.
Correct. So people were sending me stuff. What do you think? And I just kept saying, this is insane. I don't understand it. I don't understand why nobody is saying anything. Why is no one speaking up? What is happening here? And then a good friend of mine, so Leah was formerly Will Thomas and was a swimmer for UPenn as a male for the 3 years before that. When Leah won the NCAA Division I 500, and as a male swimmer, Will, the highest he ranked in any event was 450 something place. So to show the difference, that's huge. When he won the 500 and was given the awards, I was blown away. A good friend of mine, and I'm going to add this part because I think it's relevant to everything here. I saw the post on a good friend of mine who is a lesbian, right? On her story, I went to where she got it from and then reposted from the original person. And I posted it on my personal Instagram story, not on anything to do with Oberlin's.
And that post, in essence, just congratulated.
I congratulate, and I believe her name should be said a lot. Her name is Emma Wayant. She's the real woman winner of 2022 NCAA Division I 500 freestyle events. And that's what the post said. And then my words at the top were, what do you believe? I can't be quiet anymore. I've spent my entire life playing, coaching, and starting sports programs for girls and women. And I was very specific in what I said intentionally.
And I'll disclose, I've been on the campus of Oberlin many, many times, officiating college basketball games.
Right.
And that's how we got
Yes.
connected, from our mutual friend, Coach Isaiah, who I love. And, you know, you being there, I think some people may think, wow, Oberlin must, as they're listening around the country, Oberlin must be this very conservative college that would have a coach that would be willing to say that. And I'll say, you referred to yourself earlier in this broadcast as am I saying it right? Hippie love coach? How?
Yeah.
Hippie love coach. And Oberlin is one of the most, is it fair to say, liberal institutions in the country?
Yeah, I would put it up there as either the most or definitely one of the most liberal schools in the country. Absolutely.
So, and when you reposted that and put that out there, you were doing it as a coach, but you know, you talked about your daughter earlier in the broadcast as well, Maddie. Were you doing it as a mom?
I was doing it as a coach, a mom, an athlete myself, and for every girl and woman in the world, because it's not just happening here; it's happening in the rest of the world as well.
What did you think the reaction would be?
You know, honestly, as I posted it, I feel things and I'm like, could get, you know, who knows what will happen.
Yeah.
Some people will be angry. Some people will be angry at this post. But not everybody followed me personally on my personal Instagram. And that's where I posted it. Did I think that my own players would, you know, send it to the athletic director? No. Do I blame them? Absolutely not. Having been at Oberlin for the time I was, I would say what is happening there is a microcosm of what's going on all over the country and, you know, certain parts of the world as well. And girls specifically, you know, really care about each other. And when girls are on a team together, you know, guys will hit each other and scream and get in a punching fight, and the next thing they'll be bros again, right, on a sports field. Girls are not like that. And it is really important. Everybody in the world wants to be loved, to matter, and to belong, right? And girls, even more so, the way that happens is very different than the way it happens with boys. Again, we can go down to biology for this and all of the differences there are, but the psyches are different. And I'm not going to say that for every single girl, but being included is so important. So,
well, and that's what happened in this. When you posted it, it was brought to administration's attention at Oberlin.
correct.
By a player. The player.
Correct.
And did the player come to you first, or did
No.
the player just bypass that whole process?
She bypassed the whole process, and it was someone who I was very close to. And again, it's one of those situations that I actually understand why she did it.
Yeah, 18 to 23-year-old kids
Yes.
make impulsive decisions. I'm a little older than that. I make impulsive. You know, I
Right.
make mistakes. So
Right.
yeah, it's going to happen.
And I don't blame any of the students for what ensued after that, right?
And what did ensue after that?
So after that, and I will point out that I coached while I was there 3 different players who identified as either gender fluid or transgender. And one of them chose to have a radical mastectomy in between her freshman and sophomore year of college. And she was one of the ones who would be in my office a lot talking to me, and I was very concerned about her well-being. And my focus would be, how do we feel better? How do we bring more joy, and get through the tough things?
And be kind to one another. Was it
Yes.
your office that I saw the pictures of all
Yeah.
the things you can be? Be kind, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot to be kind to one another.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I recognize that they believe that what I did was not unkind.
Right.
But the truth is actually the highest vibration. And when you tell the truth, you give others the strength to speak the truth as well. Because right now, almost everybody is getting silenced to even have conversations. So
when you told the truth, and obviously that young lady went to the AD and the president above, and then I know there was meeting after meeting after meeting, and we've heard recordings of those meetings.
And unfortunately, you fall into a category of people that are kind of filled with hate in the world.
It's acceptable to have your own opinions, but when they go against, open the college's beliefs, it's a problem, right, for employment.
It's just interesting to me, the dialogue that came from the admin towards you. Like, well, there's a lot of dancing going on in the meetings, in my opinion. But and I know there was meetings with players. I know we heard, I believe, that one understood or stood up for you.
correct.
Were there others? And I'm sure there were others that came up to you and like, Coach, we love you. We just can't say it publicly because we don't want to face the backlash. Was there any of that?
So none of them came to me because of that fear. I know there were plenty who stayed silent and don't necessarily agree with
Yeah.
what is going on. But again, that's the, needing to stay congruent as a team and not have others mad at them.
Right. And when this happened, so we talked about it being towards the end of winter, and then lacrosse.
We were in season.
Yes.
We were in the middle.
Yeah.
We were actually in the middle of our season. And, it happened on a Monday. We had a game on a Wednesday, a game on a Saturday, a game on the next month,
Yeah.
So
and that's what I wanted to get to because, you had all those meetings in season, and then you're having meetings with the team and the sports administration there at the college and everything that's happening and going on. So, and they let you coach the rest of the season.
I did.
But then all of a sudden, when the season ended, you received a letter, if I'm not mistaken, that said your behavior needed to change. So
Immediately.
Immediately. So your behavior apparently was good enough to get through that season.
Right.
But even though you did what you did during the season, but as soon as the season ended, that's when you got the letter that the behavior must change. They didn't identify the behavior, if I'm not mistaken, did they?
No.
Okay.
And the letter was an actual piece of paper, which who gets pieces of paper letters anymore, especially at that, everything's
Yes,
via email,
yes.
and it was actually nice paper. And the letter was copied to the legal counsel, to human resources, and to the associate AD as well.
Okay.
So after that meeting, I had another end of season meeting that was a review that was devastating as a coach. I knew it would be. And I knew even if everything that had happened during my season had been different, I knew it would be tough based on all of the fall sports coaches of women's teams who had just been ripped apart by their own players in these new athlete evaluation.
Everyone has their opinions, everyone has their beliefs, everyone has their views. That's that. But what the focus should be here isn't what the view is. It should be the impact that caused, and the impact that post had.
But I still feel like they're just kind of like justifying their actions a little instead of like a true apology. Because I think being a coach, especially at Oberlin, where there's such a high LGBTQ plus population, I just feel like I would like a little more accountability.
It's not good enough just to work for women's issues or white feminism. It has to your feminism has to be inclusive for everybody and work for everybody.
Many coaches had been in my office sobbing because of these reviews. So I teach emotional intelligence and breathing and relaxation. So I prepared myself for that, but it's still, I'm human. You feel the words. And at the end of that meeting, the associate AD he said, I'm so sorry. You're not the only one this is happening to. And I said, I know, and thanks. It's still hard and hurts.
That's our guest today, Kim Russell, talking with Rob Walgate. We'll be right back for more on the Public Square.
We will be right back for more on the Public Square.
I would not and will not apologize for saying a biological male does not belong in women's sports and private spaces. After I refused to apologize, I was called in for a meeting of my team with a mediator present. A handful of the student athletes on my team attacked and vilified me as if I were the enemy and had just killed someone.
You're listening to the Public Square. Back to our exclusive interview with Kim Russell.
Once all of this had happened and I got that letter, I got an attorney. And he said, do you have to be on campus this summer? I said, no, we're out recruiting and running camps. No lacrosse coaches are ever on campus in the summer. That's when we're finding new kids. And he said, okay, well, you're going to draft a letter and it's going to say this. And when you go back, you give it to them. So the letter basically said, if I'm breaking university policy, please tell me what that policy is. Please do so in writing. And if you're going to fire me, please do it now. So I was called in for another meeting in August.
You went to a lot of meetings.
Yeah. Yes, I did. I didn't before all this.
Yeah.
And it's actually why I started recording all of my meetings with administration.
It was for protection. You had to protect yourself.
So I saw as a coach things that were, happening when I was there, and the strategic side of me, looked at things and went, I need to protect myself.
Well, because it seemed like in the meetings, the articles, everything, it had that mob mentality because it was easy to just jump on and pile on and pile on and pile on. And that's the form it seemed to take.
Yes. It was crazy, but not surprising just based on what I'd witnessed in the few years I was there.
Wow. So we get to the fall.
Yes.
You're back on campus. You give them the letter.
Before I give the letter, I am yelled at for not being on campus for the, where have you been? Okay. Nobody, is typically on campus who's a lacrosse coach in the summer, unless you want to get away from your little kids or families. But
yeah.
So I got yelled at for that. And
now, did they tell you come to campus in the summer?
No. That's never been. In all my years of coaching, that's no.
Do you have a cell phone? I got in touch with you pretty easily when someone gave me your number. It's not like okay, all right, just making sure.
In fact, pretty much everybody could find me because that's the number that was published. On Oberlin's website as if it was our office number because every coach is mobile everywhere, right? Most coach club teams and go to tournaments and run camps and do clinics in order to supplement their income. Yeah. So I went back. The first meeting was awful, and then that's when I handed in my letter. After I handed in the letter, the athletic director did not show up at the meeting to discuss my letter. Only the associate athletic director and human resources director showed up at that meeting, and it was, pretty much a joke because they didn't really have anything to say to me. The human resources director said, well, some people, agree with your opinion. And yeah, I know. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
And, he said, and people here agree. And I said, yeah, I know.
Did anyone at any time during this process, because now we're 8-9 months into this process, did anyone put the connection together and say, well, we appreciate you standing up for the women in women's sports?
No.
No, never.
No. problem.
I mean, this was almost.
Well, that's not true. People did privately.
But
yeah,
not,
no administration.
And we're coming on the heels. This would have been on the heels also of the Me Too movement.
Correct.
And
so,
on the heels of that, no one's saying, hey, what about these young ladies that are losing the opportunity to compete, and not only compete, but to win?
So this isn't even just about that. When you bring up the Me Too movement, this is what is not being told. So at this point, I have met so many incredible young women who are so courageous, who are speaking up now, who have been affected by biological males, not just competing, but being naked in their locker rooms. These are fully intact men. Okay, and this is where, as a parent, as a woman, as someone who had to change in locker rooms in sports, you put a 6'5" male in there, and you tell that male's entire team of women that they have to change with him 18 times a week, because they had 9 practices a week, that if they had a problem with it, they needed to go to psych services. And if they still had a problem with it, it was their problem. And not to speak with it to anybody. Now, the first thing I'm going to say about that is I am losing my mind over this, because I was taught, and I have taught every girl, and really boys too, but it's really focused on girls and women. If your gut feeling says you're unsafe, you scream, you run, and you go get help. Girls are being put into situations in locker rooms and now in bathrooms where they are told that it's okay for a fully intact man to be in that space, and they're not supposed to say anything.
Because if they do, they're threatened to be thrown off the team.
But guess what we're doing? These kids are being groomed to be sexually assaulted. And it's happening. It's happened in Loudoun County, Virginia. It's happening all over, not just sexually assaulted, but trafficked, because now we're telling them, don't listen to your gut. Don't run and be quiet. Don't speak up. Who has taught their kids this? So I'm asking, where are the dads who aren't worried about getting arrested by freaking out? And so a dad was arrested in Virginia.
Yeah.
And then it happened again. Not to his daughter the next time, but this is what people aren't understanding, is it's not just one medal on one stand. It's not just Emma Wayant who lost out. It's every single space behind her. It's every time Leah Thomas got in a pool and competed as a woman, somebody else lost the opportunity to compete. It's roster spots, it's playing time, and then there's physical injuries that are happening. Peyton McNabb is the one I use the most, because she has lifelong injuries from getting spiked in the face. By a male in North Carolina at the high school level. She thought she was going to go on to play collegiately. She still has partial paralysis from that injury. That was a year and a half ago, I believe. Another volleyball player was hit in the face in California recently. Field hockey player hit by a ball that was struck by a male player, not trans, but in Massachusetts.
Teeth.
Yeah,
I saw
and
that.
jaw. Life-changing injuries.
I mean, because, and this is one of the frustrating parts to me is there's, and again, this isn't meant to get political. This shouldn't be a political issue.
This is not political. This is not political.
It's not a political issue at all. But a lot of people say, study the science, study the science. Let's study the science when it comes to anatomy. Let's study the science when it comes to biology. Let's take a look at the male and female bodies, and let's talk about X and Y chromosomes and what does that mean. But no one wants to talk about that. We'd rather talk about feelings and emotions and how someone feels and where they should be and what locker room that one person wants to be in, even though it impacts a team full of young ladies who are going to be dare I say, scarred for the rest of their lives.
Right. And if you also include, so at the NCAAs, those girls were not even told that there was going to be a fully intact male in the locker room. So tell me that didn't affect how they performed that day when they walk into the locker room. And I could get into more. I'm not going to, with stories that I've heard about that. But the mental, emotional, and physical injuries that women and girls are getting, and why is everyone, regardless of what your political affiliation is, not speaking up to save the lives of girls and women instead of telling them to be quiet? That is what I really don't understand. Women and men, but specifically women, where are you? Because I've had much more support actually from men. And I believe that women are afraid to hurt somebody's feelings. And in that being afraid to hurt someone's feelings, you are actually hurting the entire female population. So when you talk about biology, it starts at conception, right? And then you start to see the biggest changes, this is what I'm told, at 6 weeks in utero. I have carried and birthed 2 males and 2 females. And if someone is in tune with their body and really knows how things feel, I can tell you things feel much differently when you're carrying a male versus a female. Some moms may not feel that because they may not think about any of those things. I can tell you there is a difference. You can feel when there is more testosterone in your body when you're carrying a male child inside of you.
That's Kim Russell, former women's lacrosse coach for Oberlin College. We're going into a quick break, but we'll be back for more of this interview on today's edition of The Public Square.
We will be right back for more on The Public Square. Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to The Public Square.
You are listening to The Public Square, and now back to Rob Walgate's interview with Kim Russell.
Getting back to you on campus, what eventually happened with you at Oberlin?
The 22-23 school year, I coached the whole year. Had an amazing experience with my team last spring. Unbelievable group of young women. Even with that, I still felt like I was walking on eggshells at campus all the time, and I was ready to be yelled at all the time. So at the beginning of the summer, I was reading an article, and I found out that it was published by a group called Independent Women's Network, and it said, "Tell us your story." So I filled out this little questionnaire, and this was the middle of July of 2023, and I was immediately sent an email by a young woman saying, are you willing to tell your story to us? Can we write it? And I said, yes. And within a week, I was on a Zoom call with people from Congress. And 2 weeks later, a team came out and did filmed footage for a documentary on me.
When you and I first spoke, one of the first things you said is, I'm the most apolitical person there is, because I was explaining to you what our organization does. But I think that this issue is not a political issue, as you've said multiple times. Truth is truth.
Correct. And I have many friends who are, I would say, pretty extreme left, and family members, and then family members at the far other side, and then a lot of us sit somewhere in the middle, and on some things we might think this, and on other things we might go the other way. It has been eye-opening, because I actually testified in front of Congress in December, and that was eye-opening and disturbing at the same time. The Democratic lead, Summer Lee, said, "You're about to hear from a bunch of transphobic bigots."
It's disappointing to me that although the title of this hearing implies a much-needed discussion, we're likely going to be forced to listen to transphobic bigotry.
And her energy was so full of hate and so angry. I think my jaw dropped. I was blown away that she would say that, and that she was just so filled with this animosity and hatred that I wanted to go up and hug her and say, what happened to you?
And you've committed your whole life to being a mom, to being an athlete, to being a coach and teacher of young ladies.
Yeah.
I know you had sons and
Yeah,
you coached
and I've
them,
coached
and
boys and,
you've coached them as well. But you
and they're different.
Yeah, but you did all this because of how you feel about women, and you knew there would be a bit of a cost to it, and you're seeing that firsthand.
Oh yeah, and I believe that everything in our lives happens for a reason, and usually when you're in it, you don't see it. When things happen and you're in the emotion, it's very difficult to see, because from a actual scientific, you're now in your fight or flight. You are in your sympathetic nervous system, and you cannot see outside the box. Once you take the time to breathe and see things, there's a silver lining in everything in life. And I believe everything that, if we say happens to us, leads us to where we're supposed to be. I believe there are so many things from my experience at Oberlin, and so many people who I love who are still there, and so many people I've coached who I love so dearly, including every one of the kids who sat around that circle and were angry with me and still are. I love every single one of them. And the ones who are playing now, I wish only the best for them. And the woman who is the assistant, she's now the acting head coach, who was my assistant. I coached her since she was in 3rd grade.
Wow.
And I'm so excited for her to have the experience to be the head coach.
So you're no longer the head coach?
No, I have not been at Oberlin since my story went public. The story went public on August 29th. USA Today told my story, and the link to the documentary was there. The documentary is called Burned at the Stake, because that's how I described how I felt like I was burned at the stake and stoned all at the same time. And then everybody else described it as a Maoist struggle session. When that went public, almost immediately, my team was told not to be in contact with me. All of the coaches and athletic staff was told not to talk to me. I did not return to campus except to have meetings with human resources. I was removed from my coaching position and offered a job as the Employee Wellness Project coordinator or manager. I can't remember the name of it. I never accepted that position. I knew that it was time to leave.
But here you are at Oberlin, and it's known for these wide-ranging views of inclusiveness.
Well, that's only if it's their narrative. And I believe that's happening, again, across the country. My kids would tell you, Mama, you've been canceled twice. That was one of my kids' exact words. Because I spoke up about some different things during COVID. If I feel something passionately and I think something's egregious, I will speak it.
Yeah.
So,
well, but you're not coming at this from an emotional perspective. You're coming at this from science and fact, and where you're an expert in the field. It's not like you're just pulling these opinions out of thin air to elicit a response from someone.
Correct. I have no problem with anyone identifying however they want. It is impossible to change your sex biologically. It is impossible. If you are a man, you are not going to give birth to a baby. You are not going to be breastfeeding a child. They're changing words and definitions as we speak.
Couple things here. I guess we had comments and questions from some young ladies that knew we were going to be sitting with you. And the girls said they talked about, as students and athletes, they feel they're at a disadvantage because this term used, sexually confused peers are never told no. They feel like the situation can be manipulated. If someone says, well, I just feel different, that's always embraced and they're never told no. Is that something that you've experienced and seen?
I would say that is one of our biggest problems right now is the feelings, and you said it earlier, the feelings of one individual are affecting basically an entire group of women and really all women. So we're seeing the erasure of women because it's not just happening in sports, it's happening in, as I said, the private spaces, the bathrooms, the locker rooms. It's happening in domestic shelters, and it's happening in prisons.
How do you fight this fight without giving up? How do you deal with the frustration that you feel?
It's not frustration. I believe we are making massive progress. It is so hard to hear the stories that I've heard and not just start sobbing every single time.
What would you have said if someone would have said that 7 or 8 years ago? You're going to be in D.C. testifying in front of Congress. I mean, would you have believed that?
The only thing I would have believed would have been for a women's march.
We're going into our final break. If your station has to cut away now, you can hear the rest of this broadcast, the conclusion, at thepublicsquare.com or on our free mobile app. Just look for the lamppost. But for everyone else, we'll be right back for more of The Public Square.
We will be right back for more on The Public Square.
Well, we're back in studio at the American Mission Center. Rob, thanks for bringing us that interview. I still can't believe it's real in many ways.
I can't either, and thanks to Kim for taking the time. And shout out and thanks to former Oberlin basketball coach Isaiah Kavico for introducing me to Kim.
I feel like everybody's a former Oberlin coach right now.
Yeah.
That's too much to say.
When I ran into Isaiah and I was talking to him, and I said, man, I would love to interview Kim. And he was like, oh, Kim's the best. She's awesome. Here's her number. And I just sent her a text out of the blue, said who I was, and she made it happen.
Yeah, we really appreciate her coming in. One of the things that stood out to me was her demeanor towards these students. She didn't have any anger towards them. I just thought that was an amazing testimony to kind of her mindset that she even said she understands why they did what they did. So this is not somebody who's trying to be embroiled in a culture war and trying to get views or likes or clicks by being some sort of online troll or something like that. She's a coach and she cares for these students and these athletes.
She cares deeply, and that's why she's doing what she's doing, and the amount of grace that she continues to show towards those that disagree with her. She has not shown animosity towards any of them. She is fighting for what she feels is right, and that's keeping women in women's sports.
Well, and I think that's a lesson for all of us. She's not stopping fighting the fight. She's still doing it, but she's just doing it in a way that's grace and truth, I would say. So I think that's one of the lessons I'm trying to take away from this. So I'll ask you, how do we move forward from here for people who want to kind of help keep women's sports a place for women to have opportunities? How do we walk this out?
Well, I think we follow Kim's lead in the sense of standing up for women in the intent of what Title IX was designated for, why it was created, to give opportunities to women. I'm reminded in this year, one of the most watched athletes in the country has been Caitlin Clark from the University of Iowa. She sells out arenas all over the country when she's on television playing women's college basketball. It's must-see TV. The ratings for Iowa women's games are higher than NBA games. People are paying attention and watching. She just set the all-time NCAA scoring mark. And now as we head towards the NCAA tournament, all eyes will be tuned to her. But I find it interesting that's happening this year. It happens in my house. The four of us Rachel, Rozzy, RJ, and I find ourselves around the TV watching Iowa women's basketball games. And I guess I just can't believe we're having this discussion about trying to keep women in women's sports.
Well, so I hear implied, you're not necessarily saying this, but implied within what you're saying, it would seem to me that wouldn't be happening for Caitlin if there were a biological male,
yes,
former male college basketball player, just like we've seen in swimming. If one came over, theoretically, they would be setting the records that she is currently setting. They would be breaking the records that she is currently setting.
And here's the thing. When we talk about this, Alan, the one thing I don't want to do is take away the accomplishments of some of these athletes that we're talking about and acting like, well, like we're talking down. Like, let's face it. If I get on the lacrosse field or the field hockey field with Kim Russell, she's going to kick my butt.
Sure.
She's going to be better than me. If I get in the pool with Riley Gaines, I'm going to get smoked.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't about saying, well, men are always going to be better than women at everything. It isn't what we're saying at all. We're just saying the playing field needs to be even. And that's all I believe Kim and Riley have been saying this whole time.
Sure. Well, we're just acknowledging that a category of men's sports and a category of women's sports exists for a reason. That's it.
Yeah. And again, that's to take nothing away from what Caitlin Clark has been able to do. She's an amazing basketball player. And it's been wonderful to see her get the limelight, her teammates get the limelight, women's college basketball get the limelight, get the attention, get the eyes on them for how great they are at what they do. I mean, it is so expensive if you want to see Caitlin Clark live right now, even to sit all the way at the top. I think when they played, they're in the Big Ten, so kind of it was cheaper to go see her at times in Iowa City than it was in, whether you wanted to go to Ann Arbor, Michigan or Columbus, Ohio, or a road game because they only got to see her once.
More or less expensive than going to see Taylor Swift live. or does it depend on the city?
I think it would depend on the city, but I'm a dad of a daughter. I'm a girl dad.
Yeah.
I have nieces. They all compete in their own different fields. I see the joy, whether they're dancing, whether they're swimming, whether they're on the basketball court, whatever they're doing. I see them doing it on the volleyball court. I spent an entire day a few weekends ago watching my niece play volleyball, and I enjoyed it. But watching her compete with other young ladies and to see those young ladies out there playing, competing against what I would consider a level playing field. They're each given the opportunity to succeed, but they're also given the opportunity to fail. It's great. Sports are great life lessons. And we've all learned on the court, on the field, in the arena. We've all learned life lessons that we've been able to apply, that we've been able to hang on to. But to see that playing field be level and see girls competing against girls and keeping it in an environment to where it's safe for them, but also so that it's that level playing field that we mentioned, so they have a chance for success, so they have a chance to win. When we look at Title IX, we see the intent of it. As we move forward, I still can't believe that this has become a political issue. I don't understand how this has become a political issue at all, but it has. And we have to keep the main thing, and right in front of us, what is Title IX? What was the intent of Title IX? And let's keep women in women's sports.
I was given the gift of Title IX when I was 5, right? And I know a lot of the women who helped pen Title IX, including my college coach, who I'm still in constant contact with. There are so many women who paved the way for people like me to have the opportunities that I have. And if I'm not going to fight for the next generations to have these opportunities, I don't know who will. Because I'm at the point in my life that I can. But I would say to the girls, I will say to the girls all day long, speak up. When you speak up, you give more people the courage to speak up.
You've been listening to The Public Square. Thanks to our guest, Kim Russell, for joining us on the program and sharing her story. Thanks as well to Independent Women's Forum for the use of some audio clips that were used in their documentaries. And thanks to you for listening. We'll see you next time on The Public Square.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.